Greetings, most esteemed members of the guild. This month we're talking about plague. So remember to get writing because our competition finishes at the end of the month. Today, we'll be taking a look at leprosy as a case study for world builders who are creating diseases or plagues. Also called Hansen's disease, leprosy is a slow-growing bacterial infection and can incubate for up to 20 years before symptoms start to show. It affects nerves in the extremities, which can lead to unnoticed damage, hence the myth that leprosy causes bits to literally fall off you. It can cause blindness, muscle weakness, skin thickening, and disfigurement. As cartilage is absorbed back into the body, fingers and toes can become shorter and noses flatter. Medical images are pretty graphic, but feel free to search for yourself if you like. Here's a banana instead. Leprosy's been around for at least 4,000 years, and was incurable before antibiotics. It's still a problem today in Brazil, India, and even some of the southern United States. It crops up repeatedly in the Bible, and a well-cited phrase from the Quran is, "Flee from the leper as you would from a lion." These days, a lot of people are now immune to the disease, and an otherwise healthy body can fight off the infection. But scientists still don't fully understand how the disease is transmitted, although it's clear that it's more prevalent amongst poor living conditions. Current theory, it's transferred via nasal and oral fluid. Delightful. Some animals also carry leprosy. Cynomolgus macaques, sooty mangabes, African chimpanzees, squirrels, and armadillos. So don't poke them. We've looked at fast-acting diseases like sweating sickness, but slowly progressing diseases create a whole different set of problems. There are loads of taboos surrounding leprosy, but the most obvious one is that it causes disfigurement, which people are pretty squeamish about. But what if your disease causes red eyes, horns, or scaly skin? Or what about a disease that actually makes people look more beautiful, gives them lustrous hair or a glowing halo? Disease can cause body odor, personality changes, sensory loss, and magical diseases might have even weirder symptoms. Whichever symptoms you choose will have a huge impact on how the disease is perceived. And remember, your sufferers may have to live with it for a long time. As with a lot of diseases, certain people are more susceptible to leprosy. Your disease might be gender-specific, species-specific, or related to certain lifestyles and habits. Who the disease affects will also change how it's viewed. Is it the foreigner's blight, the pirate's penance, or the royal affliction? And the same disease might be viewed as holy by one lot of people and unholy by another. Leprosy is a great example of this. In the medieval period, a lot of people thought that the sufferers of leprosy were being punished by God, that they deserved their disease. On the other hand, there were people who thought that because they suffered, they were more close to God, and that when they died, they would go straight to heaven. They wouldn't have to pass through purgatory first. In some cultures, leprosy was seen as an example of unclean blood. An event of it could stigmatise a whole family. Would you marry your child into a family that had leprosy? Even today, sufferers of leprosy are reluctant to seek treatment because of the stigma. Now with leprosy that's pretty awful, but imagine it was an even more contagious disease, and imagine what your family might do to you if they found out. Leprosy isn't immediately fatal, and sufferers can live a long time. So what does your culture do about all the ostracised and exiled sick people wandering around? Throughout history, sufferers often turned to begging. Bells and rattles would be used to attract attention and to entice donation. By the medieval era, the luckier ones entered church-funded sanatoriums. There, patients were cared for, and even sometimes joined the holy orders themselves. Sometimes, leper colonies would produce sellable goods to support themselves. Imagine the irony of the most beautiful lace, or the most delicious wine, being produced by disfigured hands. Also worth considering is what stops people subjugating the sick of your world. What stops them turning them into a task force for mining or farming. In George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, the sufferers of grayscale, disease very similar to leprosy, are exiled to a remote island. In the real world, this was also a very common solution. Check out the Isola di San Lazzaro in Venice, Calydon, Greece, and Molokai Island, Hawaii. Leprosy hospitals were often built outside towns or at crossroads, divorced from society, but still close enough to beg for alms. Architectural adaptations included sloped floors in some churches so that they could be washed down after the lepers had attended mass. Chalk was also sometimes thought to purify the disease. The hospitals would be built on chalk or the walls would be daubed with chalk. When leprosy went into decline, largely due to an increase in immunity in the population, these became repurposed as the first care homes for the poor and disabled. There was even an Order of St. Lazarus, a knightly order founded in the 12th century by crusaders. Their main purpose was the care of leprosy sufferers, and their headquarters, a town called Burton Lazars, still bears their name today. Despite the fact that most people in the Western Hemisphere think that leprosy is extinct, it's not, by the way, I bet most of you knew what it was. That's because it's worked its way into our cultural heritage. Through its presence in the Bible and other holy books, it survived in songs, stories, and novels until the 19th century. It also appears in a few verbal idioms. That, by the way, is a great way to introduce your readers to a disease early on. For most of history, there was no cure for leprosy, but plenty of people must have had a crack at trying to find one. Pliny the Elder recommended a poultice of beetles or caterpillars steamed over vinegar and salt. Delightful. But consider how much profit there might be in discovering a cure, or even a fake cure. It might even alleviate symptoms in the short term, but have no long-term effect. Profitable and dishonourable. Preventatives, medical or religious, would also be a profitable market. Also worth considering, what if your disease is a looky-like? There were plenty of diseases which were misdiagnosed as leprosy. There's one picture from 17th century Holland which shows a man in a leper colony not suffering from leprosy, but from a virulent scalp infection. So, just to recap, a slowly progressing disease will definitely have a huge impact on the culture of your world. It might make its way into speech, song, rhyme, folk stories, or even become major plot devices in novels. The type of symptoms and who suffers from the disease will have a major impact on how the disease is perceived. And of course, that perception might be different in different times or places. Preventatives or cures may or may not be available, but you can be sure that plenty of people will try and take advantage of the situation if there's money to be made. So, hopefully that's given you some great ideas for different ways in which you can use disease in your world building and different facets you can explore within that. Alright guys, I'll see you next time. Bye!